This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Before there was a Predator drone, there was the original Predator in the ring, and that was Don Frye. How you doing, Don?
I'm good, Carl. How you doing, partner?
Fantastic. And you were a UFC mixed martial arts fighter, and many people probably remember some of the legendary bouts you had with Ken Shamrock and I want to say Yoshihiro Takayama, right? Correct. Is that where you started? Did you start in mixed martial arts?
No, sir. I wrestled in high school and then college, and then after college I did about a year and a half of professional boxing. And then I got out of it. I was a fireman. On my days off, I was shoeing horses because I went to Oklahoma Horseshoeing School for their 3-month program, and did that. And then I was a fireman, like I said, for about 6 years. And then I started doing judo, and on my off time between horseshoeing and fire department, and I just got divorced. I said, well, hell, it's time to do something different.
Wow, that's amazing. So you decided to go to the UFC. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I did. Dan Severn was a friend of mine, so I called him up, and he got me a bunch of fights throughout the country. So, back when I started, it was no holds barred, and I did, 7 to 10 no holds barred fights, around the country, and I was a world heavyweight champion shoot fighter before I got into the UFC.
I didn't know you were a furrier. That's amazing. A farrier, that's got to be one of the hardest jobs. I spent time on the backstretch as a kid. And so, the extent of my experience with the shoeing was I would hold the horse while the farrier pulled the shoes off, took a little toe off, rasped it flat, and put some racing plates back on. But that's an amazing. I don't think people have an appreciation because most people don't have contact with large animals. But if you've been involved in thoroughbred horse racing, you know that the blacksmiths are the hardest workers on the track, and they spend the entire day bent over, quite often with some amount of the horse's weight on their back while they're holding that foot up and shoeing that horse. Correct.
But, I tell you something. A big horse like that, I'd rather have a big, tall horse leaning on me than having to crawl underneath a short horse. That's the worst thing. I mean, when you're dealing with a horse that's 17 hands tall or so, it's easy. You just bend over and slide underneath. But man, right. When you got to deal with a pony or a miniature horse or something like that, or just a workhorse who's only 15, hands, that's quite a crawl underneath that thing.
Yeah. And another thing that people probably don't know, but when the blacksmiths use what do you call that? It looks like a pliers. It's a clipping tool that you clip the front of the hoof.
Nippers. Nippers.
When they used to nip the hoof and throw that dead hoof away, the dogs used to fight over the pieces of hoof. They would fight over it to eat it.
Oh yeah, like a cookie for dogs. Boy, I'll tell you what, I had a big old English bulldog with me, and he would ride with me, and boy, he just hung out there. He'd come out of the truck and grab a piece of hoof and crawl back in the truck and eat it in the laying down.
And they even like it more when the horse has thrush because it has that smell to it, and the dogs fight over it. It's amazing. It's so funny.
Right? Yeah, it's a little bit more gooey.
Yeah. So you did really well in the UFC for a guy who just decided, I've got some extra time. I think I'll try this. That's amazing. I didn't know that was your story.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I had wrestled for 8 years and did a year in that professional boxing. Then I did a couple years of judo, and I was I started out as a second-degree black belt. I started when I did the UFC, so it wasn't like just tough guy contest. So you're sitting on a bar stool and say, "Look, I think I'll try that."
Right.
Everybody in the early days of the UFC had 10, 15, 20 years of experience underneath their belt. They had been world champions in their form. They had been masters, in their form. They had schools. So, it wasn't just some fat ass off. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. You can say ass. That's as far as we can go on the radio, but you can say that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, some fat fella off a bar stool. I mean, these were all world champions and masters in their styles, and they had been around it, like I said, 10, 15, 20 years. And, it's not like today's a little bit different. The athletes a lot better today, better trained, all that, but most of these guys, as you see in their TV show, they come in with 0 fights or 3 or 4 fights, and then they have a couple fights throughout the show, and then they get into the UFC with 5 or 6 fights. Back when I was fighting, like I said, we had world champions, we had national champions, we had guys who've been fighting for years.
Right. Were you and Ken friends aside from what you guys did in the ring?
No, sir.
No,
sir.
I guess it's hard to be friends with a guy that you want to go in and pulverize in the ring, huh?
It's a little difficult, I'll tell you what, because I have to build up a hate for him. I really do. Otherwise, I put myself in their shoes, and I feel sorry for them, and I just can't do what I need to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. You were in the movie Miami Vice, as I recall, right?
Briefly. I was in there. I had done a scene. Excuse me, sorry about that. I'd done a scene, and it was a stunt scene. They threw me off. They had Jamie Foxx threw me off of a porch 13 times, right onto the concrete. And next day I come back, and they said, we're going to reshoot that scene. I said, what are you talking about? It's 13 times. And they said, well, somebody told Jamie Foxx that you were an Ultimate Fighter, and it doesn't look believable. Nobody believe it, so we're letting somebody else do it. And they had an actor do it, and they had 2 crash pads that were about 18 inches thick, and he did it. Every time he did it, he'd get up, my back, my neck, man. That's just, why the heck does he get crash pads and I didn't? But, well, he's an actor, Oh, okay.
That's terrible.
So then they moved me to coming up when Fox enters the trailer at the end of the movie. I come up swinging baseball bat. He stabs me and then shoots me in the back of the head.
Oh, that sucks.
And what happened was they ran the gimmick, the air system through the back of my hair. They had it attached to my ribs. Ran a hose through the back of my hair, and then the squib at the front of my forehead. So when he shot me, it splattered blood out the front.
Right.
And the hose, there's so much pressure in it burnt the hair off my head.
Oh,
so
man.
I had a fight. I had a fight a couple weeks later, and you can see the outline of the hose in the back of my head there.
Oh man, that sucks. I mean, that's
it looks pretty silly.
I just can't believe that they gave him pads and they didn't give you pads. It seems like that would be standard for anybody who they're going to throw on the ground to have pads there. You know what I mean?
Oh wow, I don't know. It was just funny. Michael Mann, I love Michael Mann. He's a director. He likes to see what he can do with me and how much I can take. So I've been privileged enough to work for Mr. Mann 3 times.
What about Public Enemies? I just found out you were in that movie too with Johnny Depp, right?
Yeah, that was Michael Mann movie also, and I killed Johnny Depp, and I didn't work for 4 years after that. So you got to be careful who you kill in Hollywood,
Even if it's make believe. Now listen, you are still training, right? How old are you now? Can I ask?
I will be 49 in November.
Oh, wow. Well, happy birthday in advance. So you're still training, right? You still train every day?
Well, I work out. I don't train, but.
And what's your
what happened?
What are your workouts
May
like?
2010. Pardon?
What are your workouts like?
Oh, I hit the bag. I'll lift the weights. I'll hit the bag. I'll ride the horse. May 2010, May 2011, I had 5 back surgeries. And then a year ago, I had my 6th back surgery where they fused 10 vertebrae. And I got up and I got out of the hospital, and I started taking the GLC 2000 right away. And I tell you what, within a couple of weeks, I was back in the weight room.
Really?
And I tell you, man, the GLC 2000 and now the Actistatin, it makes you feel completely different. I'll get on my horse, and I'll go for a ride with my daughter, and I do the workouts, and we have a lot of fun.
You know, we had Gary Stevens on the show too, who just had his first knee surgery as well. But he talked about the same thing, all the falls he took on the racetrack, and then that actistatin changed his life and got him back into the game. So a lot of people don't realize how powerful the GLC products are. But I've been taking them for years, and I continue to squat heavy and train heavy. And part of the reason, whenever I go get x-rays of my knees and stuff like that, the doctor looks at me and goes, "Man, your knees look great." And I don't even want to tell him why, because he won't believe me if I tell him, well, I take this supplement. They immediately discount it. This stuff's amazing. Right. It really is amazing. Now, what is this Predator Predictions? You have a YouTube channel now, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Don Frye YouTube channel, and we only did 4 or 5 of them, and we'll do it a couple weeks before the UFC pay-per-view, and we'll predict the winners. We're at about 90% success rate.
Really?
What I think we're going to do, we might change off to Bellator and start predicting the Bellator fights.
Now, what is that? I'm a neophyte here. What are the Bellator fights?
Bellator's Scott Coker used to own Strikeforce about a decade ago, and then he sold it to the UFC, and he had a non-compete clause, so he had that for about 7 or 8 years, and now it's wore off, so Scott Coker stepped in and took over Bellator Fighting Championships, and they're doing great since he's turned the company around.
Now,
and so they're a second place to the UFC.
Is there a line in Vegas to bet these fights?
Oh, yeah. You can bet on every fight out there, yeah.
So I just need to start watching your YouTube channel and then getting down on a bet in Vegas, and I can make some money if you have a 90% success rate at picking the winners, huh?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
I think I just found the way to make some extra scratch here. That's a good idea. How do people?
That's right. Just got worry about that 110%. You know?
Yeah, there you go. How do people find your YouTube channel?
Just go on YouTube, type in Don Frye Predators Predictions.
And it's FRYE for those of you who aren't aware.
Correct.
Don Frye. And so what else is in the future for Don Frye? You have anything else you're working on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm going to do a pilot for TV called Street Level. David LaBrava, he wrote it, and he's going to direct it. David plays Happy on Sons of Anarchy. And since this Sons of Anarchy is going to be over, David's wrote this new show. And then also there's a movie, Any Which Way They Come, which I'll have a small part in.
Now, is that any which way that they come? Is that a Clint Eastwood project?
No, but it's a follow-up to Any Which Way, Every Which Way Blues, Any Which Way They Can.
Right.
And Frank Triggs is starring in it. He wrote it and starring in it, and he's kind of like Eastwood's son in this, and he follows in his dad's footsteps.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So when are you going to start working on that?
I'll start working on that here in about a month. I go to Austin, Texas, and do my scene.
That's awesome. That's really, really great.
Yeah, Bill Goldberg's in it. Frank Trigg. Crap. Now I can't remember the other wrestler. Are you familiar with wrestlers?
Nah, not terribly, unfortunately.
Okay.
No. I mean, let me date myself. I'm 56. I remember Bruno Sammartino. I remember Ivan Koloff. I remember the midget wrestlers like Sky Lolo. Those are the names I remember, unfortunately. They're long gone. Although I got to meet Bruno at the last Arnold Classic in Cleveland last year. So that was Columbus.
Really?
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's been through hell and back too, health-wise, but he's doing great. He's as strong as ever. Really is.
I've heard he's a great guy. He's the only one that I love Terry Funk, and Terry told me, Bruno is a stand-up guy. If you ever get to meet him, you're friends for life,
My father used to tell, the Italians, we make this green vegetable called broccoli rabi. It's very, very bitter. And I used to hate it when I was a kid. And my father would say to me, you know who eats broccoli rabi? And I'd say, who? And he'd say, Bruno Sammartino. He goes, now you want to be strong like Bruno? You eat your broccoli rabe. And I used to eat the broccoli rabe because I believed that that's what really made Bruno strong. So that's the kind of effect he had on me when I was a kid. Don Frye's website is thepredatordonfrye, all one word, .com. You can go there, buy T-shirts, read about him, like him on Facebook as well. It's really a great story. Yours is really a great story. One question I have for you before we end. Do you think being a furrier or all of the stunts and fighting you did had the greatest negative effect on your back?
Heck, I don't know. I like being a farrier and being a fireman because, I have several friends from the fire department whose necks and backs are ruined,
Yeah.
Because you're always struggling around. You're bent over. You're picking things up. You have stuff fall on you, and you don't complain about it. It's just part of the business, and so I think after a while, everything I did had a combination on me, and heck, I used to ride motorcycles, dirt bikes, and I used to climb rocks. I mean, I had a heck of a life. It was a hell of a party, partner.
That's the important thing. Squeeze every drop out of life. That's the important thing. Don Frye, a true American hero, in my humble opinion. Don, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.